you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the committee for the report. As the Chair stated, Mr. Speaker, the role of the Fiji Higher Education Commission is an important one. He talked about the qualifications framework. Again, that's an important task. But Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that we're looking at 2016-17 report, and it's as we have said before in this Parliament, it's quite disappointing that these institutions or bodies, and we've seen many government departments, many ministries, the annual reports are always late, and sometimes we're looking at these reports issues 3 or 4 or 5 years after it's done. But let me reflect on some of the fundamental issues with respect to higher education institutions, and in particular, those which were put in place in a way to support different types of qualifications. We've had the Fiji Institute of Technology before FNU, mainly concentrating on TVET, technical skills. And unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, since 2010 and more so since 2013 or 14, there's been a lot of changes within the education system, let alone what's happening to the higher education system. And today, the lack of vision, the lack of the ability of the government to look at what was happening, to assess the effectiveness of some of those reforms, we find ourselves today in a very, very deep hole, not only in terms of the qualifications, the skills that are needed in this country, but also in terms of the quality. I mean, I had the Honourable Attorney General yesterday talk about how government needs to invest in creating more skills. I mean, Mr. Speaker, his government has been responsible for the state of decay that we have in terms of the skills. People have been migrating over so many years. There might be a lot more going now, a lot more demand in Australia and New Zealand, but for so many years we had a system which was producing enough people. The tertiary institutions were producing enough people, the FIT, then FNU. Honourable Usumate knows. He knows the value of what some of those systems were in terms of producing technical skills in this country. We know the story of the technical colleges. We spent millions of dollars, and what happened? Collapsed. We had this very good system in schools where we had vocational training, and there was this progression to the old FNTC, in terms of gaining qualifications. The result today is a complete destruction of the ability of this country right now to produce technical skills. Those are issues that the Higher Education Commission, and I'm sure we're looking at 2016-17 report, but they would be looking at what should happen in the future. And Mr. Speaker, and we've called for, not only in terms of higher education institutions, but we've called for a holistic review of the education system. We've been calling for an education commission in this country because it is important to look at what has happened in the last 15 years. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge the Higher Education Commission to look at the tertiary institutions and the failure of technical college, and what is the alternative? I know they cut tells to TVET program at USP, whether we are producing enough right now from FNU. What sort of skills are being produced? These are important questions that not only the Higher Education Commission, of course, would be concerned about the curriculum, the quality, but as a country we are concerned about. And the biggest bottleneck, Mr. Speaker, going forward in the next 4 or 5 years will be the lack of technical skills in this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to continue and refer to the Higher Education Commission's report and the appendix. And this is in relation to funding for higher education institutions. And this is the question that was put to the Fiji Higher Education Commission. And it says, Fiji Higher Education Commission, through its funding model, plays an important role in advising the government on funding allocations for eligible higher education institutions. In recognition of the critical role they play as such, what advice did the Commission give to the government on the detrimental effects of withholding grant to the University of the South Pacific? In the Commission's assessment, how will this affect national development, and what will be the mid-term, long-term impact on the provision of quality tertiary education to students? Of course, the Higher Education Commission says the Higher Education Commission anticipates the matters of interest are resolved in a timely manner between parties to minimize further disruptions to the quality of teaching and learning experience in this challenging environment. The Higher Education, the committee actually posed a good question, Mr. Speaker, to the Higher Education Commission. And let me put this issue of funding to USP in perspective, because we've had so many lies, so many misinformation and deviousness, in terms of what is the real issue. And here, Mr. Speaker, because it's important for us in this Parliament to lay this out very, very clearly, and I want to do that. It is very important for us to understand that, because the withholding of funding to the University of the South Pacific is having a very, very serious impact, not only on the students from Fiji, but students throughout the region, and for us as a country as well. Mr. Speaker, there was a statement which was put by the University of the South Pacific Staff Association, and I thought they laid it out very, very well. I want to refer to some of those issues. It says, for example, that when the new Vice Chancellor Pal Alwalia was appointed, during his induction period, he put a report to the University Council of the financial mismanagement and other issues that took place. And so when that went to the Council, the first inquiry took place following the March 2019 report titled Issues, Concerns and Breaches of Past Management and Financial Decisions by the new Vice Chancellor and President Pal Alwalia to the Executive Committee of the University Council regarding financial mismanagement and failure to comply with university regulations and procedures by the previous administration. This administration was overseen by the then Pro-Chancellor, Winston Thompson, and led by former VC Rajesh Chandra. The serious nature of the allegations and the evidence provided saw the Council agreeing to the appointment of an independent accounting firm to examine the issues raised by Professor Pal Alwalia. The company appointed was the Auckland BDO. And the independent BDO inquiry concurred with nearly all the complaints made in that paper. Mr. Speaker, it is pertinent, therefore, to note that BDO had access to emails and relevant communication at the direction of the Council Chair of the Audit Risk Committee and the then Deputy Pro-Chancellor. And BDO, according to the Staff Association and the report that they produced, found nothing untoward with regards to Professor Alwalia's management. Independent inquiry number 2. The USP Special Council meeting held in Nandi, and the Honorable Attorney General was in that meeting, and I know he was a 3-member person committee that was appointed from that council meeting. And this committee in turn, that committee by the then Deputy Prime Minister of Samoa, now Prime Minister, Honorable Attorney General, and the Prime Minister of the Cook Islands, the former Prime Minister, they appointed a 3-member commission, Mr. Speaker. I said that, to work through the recommendations in the BDO report and to ramp up the university's governance structure and procedures to prevent maladministration and financial mismanagement in the future. The Commission's recommendations were accepted by the University Council, and the University administration has been systematically implementing those recommendations. The 3-member Commission did not report any adverse findings relating to Professor Ahluwalia's management. Independent inquiry number 3, Mr. Speaker. Since Professor Pal Ahluwalia's reporting of the breaches of management and finances in March 2019, there have been continuous efforts to discredit him by the Pro-Chancellor, Mr. Winston Thompson, who unsuccessfully sought to terminate his employment. The discrediting action took the form of 26 alleged allegations of mismanagement against Professor Ahluwalia. Another 33 unsubstantiated allegations labelled by the chair of the Audit Risk Committee occurred shortly after. Professor Ahluwalia was suspended for 10 days in June 2020 by the hastily convened Executive Committee. This decision was overturned by the full Council and he was reinstated. Nevertheless, for good governance purposes, the Council appointed a subcommittee chaired by Australian Professor Caroline Macmillan, who investigated the 33 allegations inclusive of the 26, and cleared Professor Ahluwalia for any mismanagement. Inquiry number 4, independent inquiry number 4, called Project Dinero, KPMG, is still not satisfied, Mr. Speaker, with USP Council decisions. Pro-Chancellor Winston Thompson and Mr. Mahmood Khan, chair of the Audit Risk Committee, instituted another investigation named Project Dinero, investigation by KPMG. That project report was available in draft in early 2020 and published in August 2020. KPMG confirmed that no financial mismanagement had occurred under Professor Pal Ahluwalia, and in fact the university was in a stronger financial position. Again, Mr. Speaker, independent inquiry number 5. When all this failed on the part of those who wanted to get rid of him, and following Professor Pal Ahluwalia's deportation, and we all know it was a Gestapo-style deportation, it was a fundamental attack on academic freedom and human rights. Then Chair Audit and Risk Committee, Mr. Khan, and then Pro-Chancellor continued their claims by appointing another KPMG investigation in the alleged mismanagement by Professor Ahluwalia and his senior management colleagues. These allegations repeated the 16-page report by P.C. Thompson in Nandi in 2019 and the 26 and 33 allegations, as well as a raft of new unsubstantiated allegations. KPMG's report, titled Project Striker, had its terms of reference set by Mr. Khan and Mr. Thompson, and included all the allegations that the Attorney General and Minister for Economy made, calling for another investigation. In considering the Striker's report, the USP Council agreed there was no material misconduct and again exonerated Professor Pal Ahluwalia and his senior management team. So, Mr. Speaker, all these inquiries have clearly cleared any allegations of mismanagement by the new Vice Chancellor and the new senior management. And so, when the Honourable Attorney General came to Parliament, they've come to Parliament on a number of occasions and said, we are withholding grant because we feel there is mismanagement. How many times you want to have an inquiry? The Council, Mr. Speaker, which includes ministers and leaders of the region, which includes Australia and New Zealand, who have the skills, who have the knowledge in that council to determine whether those allegations had any substance or any material. And all those investigations And two, initiated by those who were making those allegations. Cleared the man, cleared the university management of any wrongdoing. Now, what is the reason? And the Higher Education Commission or the Standing Committee was right in asking the question. Why is the government so belligerent? Why are they so, unconcerned about the damage that they are doing to the University of the South Pacific? Mr. Speaker, when you hold funding, you don't just give students a TELS loan and send them to the university. When they go to the university, they need good lecturers. They need qualified lecturers, experienced lecturers. They need the facilities. They need the classrooms. They need recreation facilities. They need libraries. They need books. They need computers, labs. These are facilities that universities have to provide to their students. And when you hold grants to the university, you are actually damaging the quality of education that our students get. And the other thing that they don't understand, Mr. Speaker, and this is where I think Higher Education Commission, if it is an independent institution, it should tell the government that what they are doing is actually destroying the quality of tertiary education in this country. And especially for our students who go and study at the University of the South Pacific. They talk about Fiji government being the largest contributor. Yes, in terms of grant, we might be the largest contributor, but the university's budget is close to about 130, 140 million. And Fiji government's contribution is around 30 to 40 million a year. Of course, we provide scholarships, we provide TELS loan to our students because we have to pay the fees like other countries do. And the biggest beneficiary, Mr. Speaker, of funding allocation to the University of the South Pacific is Fiji. It's Fiji students, Fiji's parents. And it also adds to the economy. The spending that people who work in the university, the students who go and study there, those who come from the region, help. What is holding this government? They come and read an anonymous letter here in Parliament. But here, Mr. Speaker, is a council which has investigated all the allegations that they made and their people made. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when Winston Thompson and Mahmood Khan ordered that investigation on their own, it was breach of the council policies. And in fact, the council sacked Mahmood Khan as the chair of the Audit Risk Committee for being unethical. And there was a warning letter sent to Winston Thompson for being unethical. And yet we see these individuals all over the place. The government thinks this is the council that made the decision. So, Mr. Speaker, it's very clear that this government, they have made this decision because they didn't like one man. God knows why. But in the action, they are destroying an international, reputable, regional institution by holding this grant. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, that they will shed the ego and arrogance and forget about an individual. Look at the bigger picture. Look at the institution. Look at Fiji's history in keeping the regional university as a premier tertiary institution in the region. Let's look at the bigger picture, Mr. Speaker. Paul Alwalia is not going to be Vice Chancellor for all his life. Nobody is going to be there for all their life. But the university has been there since 1968, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, and I think it is actually, it is in some sense, it is criminal, because some of the grants that were withheld were approved by the Parliament, especially 2017 and 18. for the government to hold that grant to the University of the South Pacific. And Mr. Speaker, it is, and I speak on behalf of the parents, the students, the staff, and everyone out there in the region, that let's not penalize this institution, because long after we are all gone, you know, the university will still be there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for his contribution to